And now with me is Allan Bell, Chief Minister, who hasn't got anything on his list to talk to me about, which is quite surprising. But I've got loads to ask you. First of all, I put to Mr. Skelly, I was hearing rumours about people's take-home pay. There may be bad news in this, and you were going to release it today, but now it's not. And you're not going to tell us,
yes.
I suppose.
No, the earnings survey has now been completed. It will be released in the next few days. And there will be a press release going out with it.
Is there bad news in there?
No, it's not bad news at all. It's good news. And but I just want to make sure it's written in plain English so that there is no confusion about the import of the statistics which are included in this. But it's not bad news, no.
Okay. I mean, obviously, yesterday we get the news that everything's going up again. Electricity's going to go up, the sewerage charges, water rates, all that sort of thing. Again, above inflation as it now stands, being so low.
Well, the MEA tariff, as you know, was frozen for 3 years. We couldn't hold the line indefinitely on that, and there was a small increase of about 2.5% last year. And the MEA now, or MUA, have now announced a 2.2% increase in tariff for this year. And that's understandable, bearing in mind that the challenges that the MUA are having to face, particularly through the MEA debt. The restructuring has taken place. There's a lot of synergies being squeezed out between the Water Authority and the MEA, or the old MEA, which themselves will generate savings in the long run. But overall, there is still increasing costs for the authority to face. And of course, Treasury this year have reintroduced the interest charge to all departments in terms of capital projects to rebuild the capital reserve. So the extra costs which have been put on the MUA are now unfortunately have to be reflected in the increase in tariffs, but they're trying to keep it as low as possible. We are very conscious of the impact it has on domestic consumers. We are also very conscious that the Isle of Man has to remain competitive from a business point of view. And if we are going to maintain our drive to diversify the economy and grow the economy, we have to ensure that energy costs are competitive as well.
So that old MEA loan, is that still dragging everything down then, still?
It will be a number of years before we have that paid off, which was always the intention to begin with. I mean, this is a very long-term project. But the amalgamation of the two old boards, the Water Authority and the MEA, gives us a model now which we can work on, which ultimately will get us back into balance again.
Because hasn't the water side got great reserves as well?
It has built up reserves over the years.
So you've got this strange situation, the one authority now together, on one side has got money, the other side in debt.
But we've been able to rationalise the two departments too. From a staffing point of view, from the buildings point of view, we were able to get rid of a number of buildings. And bit by bit, we'll be able to bring these two authorities together and get the finances back into balance again.
Okay. Well, we always ask people if they've got anything they want to ask you or anybody that we talk to. And I got an email from Alistair here who says, if it was possible to ask you about the VAT situation, to clarify it, how much did we, the Isle of Man, actually lose? Was it 140, 160 or 200 million pounds? And did we lose all that in 1 year, or was that a phasing in period?
It was in two tranches. The first year was 100 million. That was phased in over a 2-year period. So it's 50 million a year.
And was that going to be that at that stage until they came back almost?
No, that was their first. We need to go back to the starting point. All this occurred after around the credit crunch, when the UK public finances were in a pretty desperate state. The UK were carrying out a review of quite a number of these type of agreements. They'd have long-standing agreements to see whether they were still relevant and, in fact, whether they were properly balanced. In the intervening period between when the VAT agreement was first signed and that particular moment in time, the Manx economy had changed dramatically from being basically a tourist-based economy to the international economy we enjoy today. And therefore, the foundation on which the original VAT agreement was based was obviously changing as the economy changed. And therefore, the UK, after their review, believed that we were being overpaid on the new model. And they extracted 100 million initially, and then they continued to review the various aspects of the agreement and believed that we were still being overpaid, and took the best part of another 100 million after that. But that was over a number of years, those two transfers. It didn't all happen at once. But cumulatively, it adds up to roughly £200 million.
And I suppose bringing this thing up to date is that they can come back and there's still talk that there's going to be another review.
Discussions are still coming on. We are very close now, though, to completing the review of the existing arrangements. We have worked through the Office of National Statistics in the UK to identify the true level of VAT generated by the Manx economy. We have a tentative agreement on the way forward on that. Quite what the final outcome in terms of revenue generated for the Isle of Man is concerned, we still have to finalise that figure. But we are close to having an agreed model now between the UK Treasury, HMRC, ourselves, with ONS, the Office of National Statistics, working to
so you get some sort of stability, you'll be able to plan.
Yes.
Because up to now, it always seems like you never know quite when they're going to come back again.
It has been a worry, and I know, if the HMRC come back twice, there's always a fear they'll come back a third time. But we believe the steps we've taken now to stabilise that agreement, to get a coordinated agreement between all parties as to what the true figure is, will put us in good stead for the future. And once this final agreement is signed off, I would be hopeful then that would rest for a few years.
What do you say to the criticism you'd be getting in the House the other week about reacting to all this going on in the UK as far as the electioning that's going on? You never sent a letter, other people sent letters to be more forceful about our position in the world and leave us alone.
We do a huge amount of work, and I do personally, in lobbying politicians in Westminster on an ongoing basis, 52 weeks a year. We meet a good number of people in the Labour leadership. I've met Mr. Miliband myself, and we constantly are putting forward the position of the Isle of Man. Now, Mr. Miliband's letter is really jumping on the issue which was initially triggered by Mr. Cameron about beneficial ownership and public registers. Mr. Miliband has now come out very strongly saying that he will force us to have a public register within 6 months, open the books.
See what you're up to, yeah?
And if we don't do it, he is threatening to put us on the OECD blacklist. Now, we need to be calm and responsible, I think, in our response to this. We are in the middle of a UK election. UK politicians, any politicians at election times, can make quite outrageous statements, frankly, to grab a headline, to prove a point.
And this has become a good subject for them all, hasn't it? They love the idea of whipping somebody else.
Small jurisdictions like the Isle of Man will and probably always will be a whipping boy, because we are a low tax jurisdiction, we are a successful economy, and there is a clear debate in the United Kingdom about tax evasion and tax fairness, and we are drawn into that wider debate.
But should you respond more, I suppose, is really what it comes down to.
We need to choose a time and place for responding to these things. I responded very robustly a couple of years ago when Mr. Cameron started this. I did TV interviews, radio interviews, press interviews. I met Mr. Cameron myself. And we ultimately got quite fulsome praise from Mr. Cameron, and who personally stated the Isle of Man is not a tax haven.
Indeed, in the House of Commons, along with
absolutely,
Jersey,
and that was a result directly of the lobbying that we did at that time.
Right.
So we are very active on that front. Mr. Miliband, I've met his senior ministers around him. I've met. They know what the Isle of Man's position is. This particular statement, at this point in time, is pure electioneering. What we need to do is keep a cool head about this, because there will be other statements from other party leaders, I'm sure, over the next few weeks, which probably will affect us.
Okay, well,
we need to have a clearer idea what the makeup of the new government is, and then we can directly lobby people who need it. I have to say, he has threatened that the Isle of Man will be put on the OECD blacklist. Now, last week I had a personal telephone conversation with Mr. Gurria, who is the General Secretary of the OECD, quite a long conversation. And Mr. Gurria was full of praise for the Isle of Man. We worked very closely with him. I've met him on a number of occasions. And his rhetoric was a lot softer than Mr. Cameron, I have to say, without going into any details. So don't worry, there is a lot of work going on behind this, but it's important that we don't respond to every soundbite that comes out of a
But
UK
other
politician
jurisdictions
at
thought they
election.
should, that's all.
Well,
you don't get together and have a concerted effort.
we do as a rule, but at the end of the day, it's for each jurisdiction to make its own decision as to how it promotes itself.
Finally, with these hard times we're in, you're sending a minister and CEO off to New Zealand.
Yes.
At how many thousands of pounds? And
I don't have that figure.
you're comfortable with this, though?
Yes, absolutely. The health service is one of the biggest challenges that we have at the moment. We've put a great amount of work in the last 2 or 3 years to stabilise the Isle of Man Hospital in particular. But we recognise, and the CI65 debate which we initiated is highlighting that the welfare state is going to be under extreme pressure in the time ahead, and the health service is part of that. What we need to do is to look at every model we possibly can at the moment to see if we can find either an alternative to what we have at the moment or ways of improving what we already are providing for our people. Now, New Zealand has a health model which is believed to be one of the best in the world. It is a bit different from what the UK has, and I think, bearing in mind that the UK itself has problems with its health service, we should not be blindly following what the UK is doing. We should be looking further afield for new ideas, to make new contacts, and to get new strategies which we can put into place for the Isle of Man. So Mr. Quayle going to New Zealand, meeting the key people out there, seeing firsthand how the system works. He's meeting a number of New Zealand politicians while he's out there as well to build the relationship between the Isle of Man and that country. It's vitally important. Now, you've got to understand, if the Isle of Man is going to survive in the world that we're in today, we've got to be looking outwards. We cannot simply be studying our own neighbours all the time.
Well, assuming it's running the thousands, he's not going to go and coach then. He's going business, and he's going to be...
Well, I don't know. I really don't know the details of how he's travelling. But that's not the point. The point is what the outcome is going to be at the end of it. And we have got to open up our minds to other ideas outside of the United Kingdom. We can't slavishly follow systems which, frankly, at the very best are creaking in the UK. We need new thinking, new directions and new strategies, and we can only absorb that from the wider world.
But with 18 months to go, will you have time to do any of these things? He comes back from New Zealand, will it all be lost because he gets new departments?
I mean, you always run that risk. But the ideas which are brought together now, whether it's in health or any other department, are for the long term. You're not going to see a radical change overnight, whether it's a hospital or whatever. But it's laying the foundations for a new long-term strategy in all these various areas. I've said right at the start of this administration that a lot of the work we do will not be seen within the lifetime of this House. It'll certainly be phased in over a 10-year period. We can't do it any quicker than that. Because some of these challenges are so huge, and I refer again to the welfare state and the challenge there, there is no quick fix on these.